Welcome to the Deep Dive from BookCast FM, bringing books to life one cast at a time.
Great to be here.
So today we're digging into something I think a lot of us wonder about.
Great.
What really makes the difference for people who, actually achieve those big, ambitious goals?
Right, versus those who maybe start strong but don't quite get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're focusing on Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance.
A really influential one.
Definitely. And for this deep dive, we're working from a detailed book summary, sort of our guide to unpack the core ideas.
So we can get straight to the heart of her argument.
Our mission here really is to understand this thing she calls grit, this mix of passion and, just sticking with it.
Perseverance, yeah. And how it actually works in achieving long-term goals.
Hopefully giving everyone listening some useful takeaways for their own pursuits.
Absolutely. Duckworth's main point, as the summary lays out, kind of challenges that old idea that talent is everything.
Yeah, the focus shifts, doesn't it?
It does. She argues pretty strongly that grit, the sustained interest, combined with relentless effort is often, more important than just raw ability.
And she backs this up, right? It's not just opinion.
Oh, definitely. The book, and our summary reflects this, uses a whole range of stuff: psychological studies, personal stories, case studies from different fields.
Okay. And there's that core concept, one about effort counting twice. I found that really interesting.
Yeah, that's central. It's like a formula almost. Talent times effort gets you skill.
Right.
But then skill times more effort gets you actual achievement. So effort is working at two different stages.
It really makes you stop and think about where we put the emphasis, like when we praise people or develop skills.
Exactly. It shifts focus from just having talent to actively using effort to build skill, and then using more effort to turn that skill into results.
Makes sense.
And she doesn't just leave it there. The summary points out she gives us tools, ways to actually cultivate grit. Things like developing a growth mindset, that belief you can actually improve. Engaging in what she calls deliberate practice.
Oh, okay, deliberate practice.
Yeah, we'll dig into that more. Also, having clear long-term goals, finding a sense of purpose, maintaining hope, and even the culture around you.
And the really encouraging part, I think, is that it's not fixed.
Not at all. That's a key message. The summary stresses that Duckworth sees grit as something you can learn, you can develop. It's not like you're born gritty or you're not.
Which is good news for most of us.
Definitely.
Now, this summary also highlights some really impactful quotes from the book. Maybe we can walk through a few.
Yeah, let's do that. They really capture the essence. How about this one? Enthusiasm is common. Endurance is rare.
Ooh, that hits hard. You see it all the time, right? People get excited about something new.
But that initial spark fades. Duckworth is saying the real test, the gritty part, is sticking with it when it gets tough, when it's not new and shiny anymore. That endurance.
It's the long haul. Which ties into another quote, maybe the defining one. Grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals.
Super direct. It nails it. Not just bursts of effort, but that sustained commitment over time, driven by real interest.
And she tackles that talent obsession head on, doesn't she? With our potential is one thing, what we do with it is quite another.
Right. It pushes back against thinking potential alone is enough. It's about action, about what you do with whatever ability you have. Effort, again.
Which brings us right back to effort counts twice, that core idea.
Yep, the mathematical way of framing it. Effort multiplies your talent into skill, and then multiplies your skill into achievement. It's powerful.
And she observes this in real life, saying the highly accomplished are paragons of perseverance.
Yeah, look at top performers anywhere, sports, arts, science, business. You see that unwavering dedication. They don't just give up easily.
But again, it's not something you're just stuck with. That quote, grit grows. That's the optimistic message.
Exactly. It can be developed. It's not static. You can build it through practice, through mindset shifts.
Okay, and this one feels very relatable. The temptation to quit is greatest just before you're about to succeed.
Oh, absolutely. We've all felt that, right? Things get hardest right before the breakthrough. It's about pushing through that specific point.
Like the final mile of a marathon, maybe?
Something like that. And then there's the classic resilience image. To be gritty is to fall down 7 times and rise 8.
Just keep getting back up. Don't let setbacks define you.
And she offers a really interesting take on passion, too.
Yeah.
Passion for your work is a little bit of discovery, followed by a lot of development, and then a lifetime of deepening.
So passion isn't just this lightning bolt moment you wait for.
Apparently not always. It's often something you find gradually, then work on, cultivate, and it deepens over time as you invest in it.
I like that. It feels more achievable. And finally, this one's really empowering. Even if you are behind right now, you can catch up.
Yeah, that's huge. Perseverance can overcome starting disadvantages. It's never too late to build grit and work towards your goals.
Okay, so those quotes give us a great feel for the core ideas. Now, the summary breaks the book down into parts. Let's start with part 1, what grit is and why it matters. Chapter 1 is showing up.
Right. This sets the stage. Duckworth talks about her early experiences teaching. She noticed something odd.
What was that?
Some of her smartest kids, on paper, didn't do so well. But others, maybe not top of the class intellectually, they achieved amazing things. It got her thinking.
About what separates them.
Exactly. That led her to research in really tough places like West Point during their intense Beast Barracks initiation.
Yes, the Beast Barracks example.
And also competitive settings like the National Spelling Bee and even demanding corporate jobs.
And what did she find?
Consistently, across these different areas, the people who showed more persistence, more resilience, they often did better than those who just seemed naturally talented.
So the West Point study, the grit scale she developed, was actually a better predictor of who would make it through Beast Barracks than, say, their entrance scores.
Yeah, often it was. It showed that sticking power, that sustained interest and effort was incredibly important. It's not just about surviving challenges, but consistently putting in the work, just showing up day after day.
Okay. Then Chapter 2 talks about being distracted by talent. What's the idea there?
It's about our culture's fascination with innate ability. I love the idea of the natural.
We do, don't we?
Yeah, and Duckworth calls this the naturalness bias. We tend to prefer people who seem effortlessly brilliant, even if someone else achieved the same or better results through sheer hard work.
And that bias shows up where?
The summary mentions things like classical music auditions, judging based on perceived natural flow, or even in hiring decisions in companies.
And why is that a problem?
Well, Duckworth argues it can undermine motivation.
Yeah.
If you're seen as naturally talented, you might feel pressure to always seem effortless and quit when things get hard. And it undervalues the hard workers. She really sees effort as the great equalizer.
Got it. Then Chapter 3 really digs into effort counts twice.
This is where she lays out that formula we mentioned. Talent x effort equals skill. Then skill x effort, achievement.
Simple, but profound.
It highlights that effort is like a multiplier. Talent alone is just potential. Effort turns it into skill. But then you need more sustained effort to turn that skill into actual tangible results.
And she uses Will Smith as an example, right?
Yeah.
Someone known for his work ethic.
Exactly. He often talks about his success coming from relentless work, not just talent. And this chapter also introduces deliberate practice properly.
Which is?
It's not just mindlessly repeating something. It's focused, goal-oriented practice, often pushing you just outside your comfort zone. It's hard work aimed specifically at getting better.
Okay. So Chapter 4 asks, how gritty are you? This is where the scale comes in.
Yes, the grit scale. It's designed to measure your passion, how consistent your interests are over time, and your perseverance, your tendency to stick with things, follow through on commitments.
And the scores actually predict success.
Her research suggests they often do, sometimes better than IQ scores, especially for really challenging long-term endeavors.
Interesting. And she makes a distinction between grit and self-control.
Yeah, that's important. They're related, but different. Self-control is more about resisting short-term temptations, like not eating the cookie right now. Grit is about that long-haul commitment to a specific distant goal, like finishing a PhD or mastering an instrument.
Okay, that makes sense. And Part B finishes with grit grows.
Which is that uplifting message again. Grit isn't fixed. It changes. It develops.
How?
With age, experience, the environment you're in, and crucially, your mindset. Adopting a growth mindset, believing you can improve, is key.
And this is where she introduces those 4 internal factors.
Yes, the 4 psychological assets: interest, practice, purpose, and hope. She sets them up here and then dives into each one in Part 2.
Perfect transition to Part 2. Growing grit from the inside out. Chapter 6 is on interest.
Right. And she challenges that idea of passion just striking you out of the blue.
With the lightning bolt idea again.
Yeah. Instead, she argues, it usually grows over time. It starts with maybe a discovery phase where you explore things.
Trying stuff out.
Exactly. Then comes development, where you work at it, learn more, get better. And finally, deepening, where that connection becomes really strong, really part of you.
So passion needs nurturing. It's not just found.
That's the idea. It takes time and effort to cultivate. Like Jeff Bezos, his initial interests weren't necessarily predicting Amazon, but they evolved.
Okay. Chapter 7 focuses on practice. Deliberate practice, specifically.
Yes. And again, it's not just logging hours. It's about setting specific, slightly challenging goals, stretch goals.
Pushing yourself a bit.
Right. And focusing intensely, getting feedback quickly on how you're doing, and then refining, repeating. It's often uncomfortable, not necessarily fun in the moment.
But effective.
Highly effective. She references Anders Ericsson's research on elite performers. This is how they get so good. She even mentions her family's hard thing rule.
What's that?
Basically, everyone in the family has to pick something difficult, something that requires deliberate practice, and stick with it for a set period.
Yeah.
Builds that muscle.
I like that. Okay, chapter 8 is purpose. How does that fit in?
Duckworth defines purpose here as connecting your work or passion to something bigger than yourself, specifically contributing to the well-being of others.
So it's not just about personal achievement.
No. She argues that when your effort feels like it serves a greater good, it fuels your grit, makes you more resilient.
An intrinsic motivation, almost.
Sort of, but oriented towards others. She contrasts self-focused goals with this other-oriented purpose, suggesting the latter provides stronger, more enduring motivation, especially when things get really tough.
Can you give an example?
The summary mentions teachers in tough schools, driven by the desire to help their students succeed against the odds. That sense of purpose keeps them going. She encourages readers to think about how their own work connects to others.
Makes sense. And the last internal piece, chapter 9, is hope.
And it's a specific kind of hope, not just wishful thinking.
What then?
It's an active belief that your efforts can actually improve your situation, that you have some control, that things can get better because of what you do. It's closely linked to that growth mindset.
Believing you can make a difference through your actions.
Exactly. It's about bouncing back from failure, seeing setbacks as learning opportunities, not dead ends. Constructive self-talk plays a big role here, too.
Right. How you talk to yourself after a setback. Okay, that covers the internal factors. Now, part 3 is growing grit from the outside in. Chapter 10 looks at parenting for grit.
Yeah, and she leans on Diana Baumrein's classic research on parenting styles.
Which one does she advocate for?
The authoritative style, which she also calls wise parenting. It's a blend of being really supportive and warm, but also having high expectations and setting clear boundaries.
So, high support and high demands.
Precisely. It creates an environment where kids feel safe and loved, but also challenged to strive, to be resilient. They're encouraged to pursue things with dedication, but they get understanding when they stumble.
And modeling grit is important too.
Hugely important. Kids learn so much by watching how their parents handle challenges, pursue goals, and stick with things. The examples of Francesca Martinez and Steve Young are used to illustrate this.
Okay. Chapter 11, the playing fields of grit. This is about extracurriculars.
Yes. Things like sports, music, clubs, activities outside the classroom. These are seen as great training grounds for grit.
How so?
They teach discipline, dealing with challenges, working with others, and crucially, committing to something long-term.
So sticking with one or two things is better than trying everything for a short time.
That's her point. The follow-through, committing for a season or a year, builds that perseverance muscle more than just dabbling. She also mentions good coaches and mentors and teaching kids to quit thoughtfully.
Thoughtfully, like not just storming off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finishing what you started, like completing the season, fulfilling your commitment, rather than giving up at the first frustration.
Makes sense. And the last chapter in this part, chapter 12, is a culture of grit.
This zooms out to the environment, schools, workplaces, teams. Duckworth argues these cultures can massively influence our own grit. If you're in an environment where high effort, perseverance, and high standards are the norm, where they're valued and rewarded, it rubs off on you. It reinforces those behaviors.
Can you give examples of gritty cultures?
The summary mentions elite military units, high-performing schools like KPP, and the Seattle Seahawks under Pete Carroll.
What makes them gritty cultures?
Things like having shared ambitious goals, really high standards everyone is held to, strong support systems alongside accountability, and often powerful stories and traditions that reinforce the group's identity and values around grit.
So being part of something like that makes you grittier yourself.
That's the idea. Your identity gets tied up with the group's gritty ethos.
Okay. And then finally, chapter 13 is final thoughts, a wrap-up.
Yeah, she brings it all together, reiterates that core message. Passion and perseverance are the real keys to unlocking potential and achieving long-term success.
And emphasizes again that grit isn't fixed.
Absolutely. It can be grown, is cultivated through our choices, our efforts, and the environments we create or join.
It leaves you feeling quite empowered, actually.
It does. The message is that grit is accessible. It's not some magic quality only a few possess. We can all become grittier.
So the big takeaway for everyone listening, summarizing this deep dive into grit.
It's that really understanding and actively working on your own grit, your passion, your perseverance can make a massive difference in reaching those big long-term goals you have. Much more, perhaps, than worrying about your level of natural talent.
Yeah, definitely encourage listeners to think about their own grit story, where they've shown it, where they could cultivate it more, using some of these ideas.
Yeah, sure.
So this deep dive gave us a pretty thorough look at the main ideas from Angela Duckworth's Grit, the power of passion and perseverance. Hopefully, it's provided a solid grasp of her research and advice.
It's a really compelling read if people want to go deeper.
Absolutely. And if you did find this useful and want the full picture, we really encourage you to support the author and grab a copy of the book. We'll put a link in the description.
It's well worth it.
Right.
Thanks for joining us for this exploration.
And that wraps up this deep dive from BookCast FM, bringing books to life one cast at a time. As you head back into your day, here's something to chew on. Where in your life could a bit more sustained effort, really fueled by genuine interest, maybe lead to some surprising results? What's one hard thing you might actually choose to commit to with maybe a bit more grit?